We're Don and Faye Smith. We are almost the same age. We're both 89, but my wife will be 90 before I will be. She's very nearly 90 in December. And we have been married 68 years and going on 69. And mostly it's been very happy.
Mostly?
Yes. Yeah, inevitably, you can't live together for 68 years without having some disagreements. And that always happens. But the point is, you learn how to solve your disagreements. And it gets better. I've often had the privilege of counseling people whose marriages were in trouble. And they think, oh, the trouble is too big. I can't adjust to this or adjust to that. Usually it comes about 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And then something about those years brings on trouble. But we have found in our own experience and others that when you face the problems, solve them together, even if somebody helps you, then marriage becomes richer and better than ever. But when you give up, it's sad, very sad. Well, first of all, we were both university students, and we were active in the Christian organization on campus. That organization had sent me and a friend to a national convention at the University of Illinois. We were at the University of Oregon. And when we came back, they wanted to report what we learned at the convention, what was good. So I told what we had learned. It was a missions convention. So I reported on that, and I talked about the indigenous church. After I finished, quite a few students came up to ask questions, and among them was
me.
This. Right.
And I didn't know what to say, really, but he was pretty good looking then. And
Then, notice.
and he seemed to know a lot, and I didn't know what he was talking about. So I went up to him and I said, "What is the indigenous church?" And so then we got together and we had to talk about that. And that led on to other things. And I'm fond of saying from that point on, I knew everything about the indigenous church because that's what he talked about.
And because she has spent the rest of her life learning about the indigenous church. About 3 months later, we were asked me to be the MC at our church's Easter sunrise breakfast, which was a tradition in our church. And she was in charge of the music and the worship. And at the speaker's table at the breakfast, here we were, sitting side by side. Wonderful opportunity to get acquainted. And it's nice to be an MC when you have such a lovely person in charge of the music. So we got acquainted and talked and talked and talked. After the evening service, I said, "Would you like a milkshake with me?" And she said yes. Well, that started a lot of things going, and here we are, still enjoying milkshakes whenever we can. Period of our courtship began on Easter, and 6 weeks later we were engaged. So our courtship was 6 weeks, technically. However, it was 15 months before we got married. But then I one time went with her while she was practicing the pipe organ, which was one of her major instruments. And I listened all the time she was practicing and enjoyed the pieces. And then I said to her, "Would you go to the mission field with me?" She thought a bit, and then she said, "Yes." What I really meant was, would she marry me? But the point was that I wanted to be sure that we were committed to go in the same direction. I did not want to spend more time. I'd already fallen very, very much in love with her. And I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. But if we weren't going the same direction in obedience to Christ, it had to stop. And so then we spent the next 15 months. She finished her bachelor's degree, and I dropped out of university to work in a lumber mill to earn the money so we could get married. And then after we got married in 1950, then I went back and finished up my degree, and at the same time working to earn enough money. She then began teaching full-time. So that's how we started. We were both 20 at the time, but we were married when we were just barely 21. But I look back on it now and I think, how did I have enough sense to know and choose her? I'm thankful that God directed me. We were married in 1950, and then, as I say, the next year I finished my first degree, and then we both taught school the next year and went back to university and completed a master's degree in education, mine in African affairs and general studies, and she in music education, and we were both qualified secondary school teachers, and we taught school half-time, went to university full-time, and then at the end of that year we left and came to Africa. We arrived in Africa in October 1952. And we landed in Cape Town, and we drove from Cape Town up to Zululand to the teacher training college where we'd been assigned to teach.
But my mother did not like that idea. It wasn't that she was against him, but when we said we were going to go to Africa, she didn't like that idea of being separated from me. So she made it very difficult for us. We didn't know how to handle that. So there were several weeks, maybe several months, where we didn't know what to do, because the whole church was so excited, not only that we were getting married, but that we were going to go as missionaries to Africa. And they were so excited about that my mother couldn't argue with that. And so that was difficult for her, but I don't know what would have happened if that hadn't gone on.
Since we were married, we've done everything together. We truly have been partners, and we're the best friends of each other most of the time. There are times we lean on each other, we guide each other, and we have taught together. She was teaching music and English. I was teaching science and English, and we would exchange ideas and help. We have done everything together, not only in teaching, but we'd use our holiday times when we weren't teaching to go with gospel teams out to the villages in Zululand and stay there and hold special meetings, vacation Bible school for the children, meetings for the adults, always together. We started a publishing house in Johannesburg, and the magazine we began became the fourth largest magazine in all of Africa in those years, a magazine called Our Africa. And we did that together. I trained the writers, editors, the graphic artists people and photographers. She trained the business people, the distribution staff, and always together. And at each step in our life, we have done things together. When we when that magazine was closed, we then shifted to Bulawayo, now Zimbabwe. It was then Southern Rhodesia. We started a second publishing house together. But at this point, we had a 5-month-old baby, and later our daughter was born in Bulawayo, and we couldn't do as much together because she had the children as well. But I often helped with the children so she could be free to do her music and her leading of choirs, conducting, organ, many music ministries that she had. So it was always together. And when we started Daystar Publications first, it was together. And our colleague, now Dr. Solzwedo Pego, was there. Then it became Daystar Communications after I finished another master's degree and my PhD. Then we together began Daystar Communications, which is what grew into Daystar University. We began Daystar Publications in 1963 in Bulawayo, and 1969 we began Daystar Communications. In 1971 we began what we then called the Institute of International Christian Communications. In 1973, at the very end, we moved to Nairobi, and with Daystar Communications, really launching it here in 1974. And we were able to buy the property on Valley Road where Daystar is in the town campus, and then later they expanded to Athi River and here. But we moved here at the end of '73, and we were able to develop local leadership and turn Daystar totally into the hands of local leadership in 1979. They asked us to stay 2 years more to help in the transition. We did. We left in 1981, and it was totally in the hands of the people that had agreed to assume the responsibility. 2011, we came back to say goodbye because we thought we're getting old, we won't be able to travel again, and wanted to say goodbye to our friends we'd kept in touch with. Then they formally asked us to return. They invited us to return. We came back at the beginning of 2012. And this is our permanent home. We have no other. And we are thankful to be here. 1955, Kendall William, he was born in Zululand, and we had asked a few months before that God would give us some sign of his promise to us that he would use us significantly in Africa. We did not want to leave. This had become our home even then. And then Kendall William was born about 8 months later, prematurely, and he lived only a week. And we were devastated. Our hearts were broken. We had longed for a family. We'd already been married 5 years and no children, and then we lost him after a week. Many years later, after our daughter was married and had her child, her first child, we were very touched and thankful that she named her first child Kendall William after the brother that she never knew. But that was 1955. It was 8 years more before our second child was born. In 1963, he was born in Johannesburg, and Donald Vance Smith. So he grew up partly in what's now Zimbabwe, but mostly in Nairobi. Both he and his sister finished at Hospital Hill Primary School, and he finished secondary school at Lenana, and she finished at Hospital Hill Secondary School. So they're more African and Kenyan than we are, very truly. We've had difficulties, many difficulties, and many times that have been very painful. Not only grief, as in the loss of our first child, but grief sometimes at the stress and tensions between the races. We've always been caught in the middle. Our sympathies and our commitment was to the African people, and that still is our commitment. One time at a mission conference where we were participating, they were criticizing the way we opened our home to the people and the way we traveled with them and so on. They said, the trouble with you is you always sympathize with the African people. I thought, well, is that bad? Isn't that why we're here? Isn't that our commitment? And so those things hurt. There were hard times. But doubt? No. I don't think we ever had any doubt that we were in the right place. We've always felt that this is where God led us.
It was so busy. I was teaching, and students were coming to me, and I was going to other people and giving concerts and everything. And I had a group of women in the area, African women, and I pulled them together and we made a little club out of ourselves. And they came once a week, and I was able to help them, and they began to sing, and then we go to different places singing. And then I had another group of women who were more educated, and so I would take them around to different things. And then I had a men's group, and so I was just so busy with music, and that's what I loved. And so I just carried on, and then after we were gone for several years, then we came back, and I was so joyful to see those groups still going on, and I could go and visit them, and we'd get together as long as we were staying in that place. And then I was able to teach at the Guanangoma College of African Music, which was founded when I was there. And so that's why I could have so many groups coming to me. That was a very big organization. And I still think of those times.
Well, we've argued at times, of course, and we disagree on some things. We approach things differently. I am quick to make a decision. She wants to consider, and she's slow in making a decision. I've learned the value of waiting for her rather than pressing ahead quickly. She's also learned the value of sometimes acting more quickly. So we have grown toward each other, and that's made our life constantly richer. So we learn from each other.
It would be mostly when we were getting ready to go somewhere to do something and hadn't really completed what we thought about it. And then it'd have to go on and do the best we could.
Well, one little thing is probably common in many marriages. If we have to leave to go somewhere for a meeting at, we'll say, 1 o'clock, and I'll tell Faye, we need to leave at 10 minutes to 1 because we have to be there at 1 o'clock. And so I'll get ready and I'll be all ready to go, and she's not. And we will end up maybe leaving at 1 o'clock when we're supposed to be there at 1 o'clock. No, that's happened over and over and over again. So now, it used to bother me and get me upset, but I learned that, well, if we have to be there at 1 o'clock, let's just say that we have to be there at 1:45. And so I adjusted a little bit. And meanwhile, Faye has planned ahead and is more often ready. So we both have learned. What's kept us going? We never considered ever, I didn't, and I don't think Faye has, any alternative except we had promised to be together until death do us part. That was a commitment made before God. And even when we had difficulties, when we were troubled, when we weren't happy with the other person's behavior or wishes, we'd made a promise, and that promise had to be kept. So I never thought of any alternative. There's a readiness to learn from each other, to support each other in the decisions we make. And I think that's absolutely a necessary foundation for marriage, whether it's long or short. I believe that we also learned as Christians who truly try to follow in the way of Christ that forgiveness is an essential part of any marriage. I don't know how many hundreds of times she's had to forgive me, and vice versa. But without the quickness to forgive each other, I don't think there can be any enduring relationship in or out of marriage. I believe that the current state of the family in much of Africa, and certainly in East Africa, is very poor. And as a result, the countries are not stable. You're not sure who you can depend upon. There is a looseness in moral behavior at all levels, in and out of marriage, and before marriage and after marriage. And it destroys any foundation of trust. How could I trust my wife if I wasn't sure that she was faithful to me? How could she trust me if she thought I was unfaithful? I've had to travel in different countries alone, and I've had women approach me and try to bring me down morally. I remember one tried to get into my room and I had to shut the door in her face, and she stuck her foot in there, and I had to stamp on her foot so I could close the door. Because I had made a promise, and my wife is my life. And until you have that kind of approach, I don't think there will be stability nationally, let alone in the family. I've told some young men here at Daystar, in talking about this issue, that come we stay does not work, because you don't stay. It's only a trial thing, and it's not a marriage. I have never touched a woman in any sexual way except my wife. I thank God for that, because have I been tempted? Of course. But that doesn't mean I've given in. And I'm sure my wife has been tempted, but she has not given in. And as a result, marriage has only gotten better over the years. It just gets richer, more trust, more readiness to care. There are some things where we can depend upon each other more than we can depend on anybody else, because we've known that that person is faithful. I think that the younger generations don't have very many examples. So it's not just the younger generation. Our generation has been unfaithful. Our children's generation has been unfaithful, and the next generation has been unfaithful. Where is the stability in that? When you give yourself totally to another person in every way, and then you break that relationship, inevitably it damages you. And then that person remains a broken person for many years. So how can you have a happy home when one or both partners are broken people? How do we build a stable nation when we're full of broken homes? So I think much is at stake, much more than personal satisfaction. The future of our nation, the future of our people is at stake. Always find fun in marriage. It's serious. It's serious for you and your partner and your children. But also there are good times. And make sure you plan for and create those good times. We made a promise to each other once when we lived in Johannesburg that we were very, very busy. I sometimes would do editing and writing and put the magazine together all night long, probably an average of 2 nights a week. We were tired. We were under stress. But we said, once every month we will go to the best restaurant we can find in downtown Johannesburg and have an evening out. Well, we'd take the train into town, we'd walk to the restaurant, we'd look at the price of the food. Well, once a month we can afford that. And we had a great time. Create those times. Look for something special, an evening out, or a nice picnic, or a quiet weekend where just the two of you are together, or something extravagant once in your lifetime.
I'm afraid I don't have anything to add. I know him so well. Okay. I don't have anything to add. I live with him. We talk about these things, and so I'm in full agreement of that.